as it says here, old, ancient, and rare books, documents, and manuscripts. And they have put together a collection of these items. They have about 1,100 items in their collection. And they make these documents available to colleges, universities, and other organizations, as it says, for use by students, faculty, scholars, and the general public who are encouraged to touch, feel, and read the original works.
When I heard that there was a possibility that the Declaration of Independence, one of the, first 30 printed, could come to our school, I really didn't believe it. I thought that there had to be some sort of kind of catch.
Hi, I'm David Baum, and I'm the director of the Remnant Trust seminars at West Texas A&M University, and visiting professor of humanities. And I'm here in Panhandle today with a good subsection of a collection of documents from West Texas's collection of about an 1,100 document archive that's housed in Indiana. And that's the archive of the Remnant Trust. The Remnant Trust is an educational foundation that has a single purpose, which is to use primary, original, rare documents in the pursuit of, well, up until now, college and university pedagogy. In other words, we've put these documents in the classroom for professors and university students to be able to study subjects that touch on the traditions of political liberty and human dignity, primarily in the Western tradition, but now globally as we've added documents from Asia, from the Arabic world, and so forth. What we're trying that's new here in Panhandle is to take these documents and to put them into high schools, to expand the coverage of our materials, as it were, to entrust high school teachers to take these documents into their own classrooms in courses like U.S. history, world history, government, English, art history, and to see if by utilizing the actual original materials we can do something that's different and exciting compared to the usual high school curriculum, which might include some access to primary documents, but for the most part is driven by texts, is for the most part driven by secondary materials. There's nothing like this in the country, to the best of my knowledge. The kind of work that the Remnant Trust does generally is unique in any case. While there are many university archives and rare book libraries in the country, some of them formidable, like Ransom Library at University of Texas or the Beinecke Library at Yale, those materials for the most part are reserved exclusively for the use of scholars. So if you're working on a dissertation, if you're writing a book, you can go into those archives, you present your credentials, and under proper supervision you can use those materials. What the Remnant Trust does that's different is to take the same kinds of materials, museum quality, rare book quality materials, and actually let people use them in the classroom as everyday pedagogical aids, as the subject, the very focus of the content of classes. And we've done that across the country for 25 years. So there have literally been dozens and dozens and dozens of those kinds of exhibits, like the one that's going on at WT right now. What is absolutely unique is having this as a high school initiative. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, the Magna Carta, all kinds of documents in early or rare, or in some cases first editions. We have Emancipation Proclamations that actually predate the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. That was January 1st, 1863. We have one from September 22nd, 1862, because that's when it was announced. And we've gone out in search of these kinds of documents. So what I think is interesting here is we're going to see if using our documents energizes students, if they can have their hands actually on the historical pieces themselves. Our experience so far, as limited as it is that that is in fact what will happen. But this is day one of a 6-day experiment, and we'll have to see where we are on Friday.
I'm kind of in awe. I mean, well, if you look at them, I mean, a lot of those are things that shaped like our culture and what we're about and what we believe. And, you know, a lot of them are what America was based on and what, you know, I mean, a lot of our modern understanding of politics and of religion and of all sorts of things come from those.
Now there's a trick to using these, and this is what I kind of want to talk to you about today. This is the Magna Carta we have. The Magna Carta we have is a beaten up book that's 667 years old. It comes from the year 1344. It's handwritten. There are marginal notes. Some are put in the margins by whoever it is who read the Magna Carta. Now this isn't just the Magna Carta, it's the Magna Carta and the laws of the realm of England as they existed in 1344. What's cool to me about this book, one of the first things you see is that it's a working copy of this book. It's not a revered document, it's probably a respected document, but it doesn't have quite the place in 1344 that it has in the year 2011. It's not a foundational book yet. This is a working copy.
It was owned by a judge, and this is basically English law, all of it, in 1350. Now, if you go to a lawyer today, and you sit down to have a meeting with him, and he needs to look up the law, he doesn't pull a book. He has a whole library of books. So this was a judge's law library. And he travels, he ties this up, puts it in his saddlebag, takes this with him when he goes out to a village to where there's going to be a trial, which was one of the things that was in the Magna Carta, is we cannot just punish people without a trial. Okay, 1607, what happened? We came here and did what? Took land, started colonies. Where did we get our law? From England, right?
Yes.
What is English law based on? That. So we bebop along for a couple hundred years, and now we're talking separating. Still, what's our law based on? That. But we want to separate, because why? Because we don't like that law?
Because we don't like how they're interpreting.
We don't like how they're treating us under that law. Are they following that law? And when we say they, we mean the King and Parliament.
No.
Are they following the law? No. What are we fighting to do? To do what? We're trying to get those rights back, right? Taxes. Were we griping about the taxes?
Yes.
Were we?
No.
What were we griping about?
About
It wasn't the taxes, it was how they were applying the taxes. Did we understand that we had to help pay for the war? Yes, but it was how they were doing it. We weren't being represented in Parliament. This says we ought to be.
Paper is it's not really paper, it's like animal skin, and it's bounded by leather and stuff like that, and it's the oldest.
Well, I think it's pretty amazing how our little school in nowhere, Texas, pretty much, is able to get their hands on these very important pieces of history. It's actually kind of moving and powerful.
I'm going to turn you loose and let y'all look at this, but I want you to know something about this Magna Carta. It is also handwritten, as is the Quran. It's handwritten on animal hide, and that's why the pages are still intact. This is from 1350. If it were on paper, most likely the pages wouldn't even be intact, but handle it very, very carefully. And when you're flipping through the pages, if you can read any of it at all, that means somehow you've magically acquired the language of French, because it's all written in French. But pay attention to the teeny, tiny script. And once again, there's no mistakes. There's no lines drawn showing the scribe where to write the words. There's no erasers. There's no scratch out marks. There's no ink blobs. And imagine this person writing this by candlelight or by lantern. Probably using a quill. Tomorrow I'm going to put into your hands some calligraphy pens that are like quills, so that you can understand the delicate nature of using a calligraphy pen. The thing that I want you to focus on too is that little letter there back to fancy lettering. Think about the skill that it took to put that letter, that illuminated letter into this book. And that is not ink, that's crushed gold leaf crushed, added in with a binder, and painted on very delicately into that letter, making this book priceless. Also note that on the outside of the book, it's bound in leather. The leather has been hand stamped, and you've got to know that those stamps weren't just purchased at your local Tandy leather store. Those stamps were handmade.
Out of everything I've seen, I think the Magna Carta is my favorite, because I just like all the writing in there. I think it's like really cool looking, and I like the pages. Like Evan just told me they were made out of animal hide, which is gross, but it's still pretty cool, I think.
This is the first thing we ever printed in the West, literally. I could always say that this is as revolutionary as Einstein's theory of relativity right here. That's a page from a Gutenberg Bible. What Gutenberg had figured out was if he adapted the Chinese technology of woodblock printing by having movable print, by basically having each one of these letters carved independently rather than a whole page carved as a page. So when the Chinese did a page, when they were done running off 500 pages or whatever they're going to do, that woodblock was now going to be thrown on the scrap heap. It was done. Gutenberg says, no, that's inefficient. I'm going to carve a whole bunch of A's, a whole bunch of B's, and a whole bunch of C's, and get the idea, and then I'm going to be able to insert those letters individually and print pages as with those blocks, and then I can rearrange the letters for the next page. It still took him 5 pages to print out 500 copies of the Bible. That was pretty darn fast back then. The Magna Carta that we have right here probably took about a month and a half to copy out by hand. Think about it. Plus, this is copied out. When you get a chance, come up here, take your glasses off and look at that. I mean, that's just some tiny script. I don't know what kind of little elf or pygmy or whatever it is that did that, but that's a tiny script. And of course, if the copyist didn't do it that way, think how big this book would be. It would no longer be portable. So the technology of the day was to just write small. Fortunately, we had invented bifocals or spectacles. Franklin does bifocals, so nobody would be able to read this.
And so all the work that you see here is related to Emerson's essay on nature. And so each student, after studying about Emerson and how the influence of Emerson influenced nature photographer, nature conservationist, and preservationist, we studied Ansel Adams' photography. And after looking at that, put a camera in their hands, and they each got to set up their own nature vignette using natural objects. And then we printed them off, and now they can analyze and critique each other's work based on what they see out in the hallway.
Like, you can touch that part of history, like somebody made it, and it was history, and you get to touch it. You get to touch history. Yeah.
This class wanted to do, let's do a play. I said, well, actually, we are going to have this opportunity come up that we could make a video. And so I mentioned the Remnant Trust and some of the things on it. Each one of the kids then they did the research, all of the research. They cut it to be a proper length for our little video. But all of these are centered on documents from the Remnant Trust. And that's what's so exciting about it.
Commonly, William Godwin had people into his home, and they would discuss the events of the day, their most recent works. It was a bit of a critique club, I'm sure, in a way. So I've just set a table here and just a semblance of a living room so that the kids can kind of get a feel for this round table collection of great minds, that creativity sparks more creativity, and that the people who gathered in this home are represented almost one and all in some literature book somewhere. They've sort of been canonized as great writers, great thinkers. And so I'm having a little bit of fun with it and letting the kids kind of, wear hats and coats and cloaks and read a little classroom play to go with it, and then hopefully understand a little historical context surrounding it, and thereby greater appreciate the works that came from this consortium of minds, and so this is sort of the before. We're waiting on our guests to arrive, I guess, and so that's what we have here. Mary Shelley was 18 when she wrote this story, completed it at age 18, and it was published fairly immediately, but this is an 1845 printing of the story. And so this was some years later. This took place in 1816. You're seeing that we're on down the way here. This is a later printing, later in her life, and not long before her death, in fact. But the thing that I noticed, okay, you guys that have now read Frankenstein, let's go back to this little book club discussion. She doesn't write like an 18-year-old girl, right? Any of you have read it? It doesn't sound anything like, it doesn't even sound anything like what a girl would write.
I didn't really understand the significance of Frankenstein whenever I first saw it. I mean, it was cool to see an early copy of Frankenstein because everybody's heard of Frankenstein. But, you know, that, I didn't think about the fact, and, you know, I'm thinking about it now, but before I hadn't realized that that started a whole genre of books, which started a whole genre of movies. So I figure if it wasn't for Frankenstein, we wouldn't have Jason Voorhees or, you know, Michael Myers or anything like that. Or any science fiction at all, for that matter.
We have right here Martin Luther's epistles on St. Paul's letter to the Galatians. This is the first English translation. We also have, back at the Panhandle Plains Museum, we have some Luther that's originally in German. Luther was not about the unity of the church, for those of you who need to be reminded of your Protestant history. And what Luther said when works of Luther were pouring off the presses, when his pamphlets were circulating in every German town that would allow them, when his Bible, his New Testament, recently translated in the 1520s, was being put in the hands of pastors and of lay readers. But all of that was going on. Luther said that God had given the printing press to the Protestant Reformation, that the whole Reformation was built on the printing press. Gutenberg's dreams of religious unification, reunification in the church in the 15th century shattered by means of his own invention. Shakespeare called it being hoisted by your own petard.
When you read that story right there, how amazing it is that we actually have something written by this man in our midst today. This particular piece here is the commentary on St. Paul's epistle to the Galatians. The book of Galatians in your Bible, right? And he read the book of Galatians and he wrote a commentary on it. He said, this is what I think is being said. This is what's being taught. Okay? But look at this. First of all, the leather binding here. And come on up here and take a look. And looks like Mudford. This book belonged to her, 1746. But here's St. Paul's epistle to the Galatians. Glorious riches of God's grace and power of the gospel, with the difference between the law and the gospel, and the strength of faith declared to the joyful comfort and confirmation of all true Christian believers, especially such a being inwardly afflicted and grieved in conscience, do hunger and thrift for justification in Jesus Christ. For whole cause, this book is mostly chiefly translated and printed and dedicated to the same, written by the famous champion of the faith of Christ, Dr. Martin Luther.
I didn't know at first just how our students would react. They have been fascinated. Their appreciation for the documents, I won't say that it has surprised me, but they have been very appreciative. I've heard several kids say, you know, how fortunate we were to have the documents, how privileged we were to have the documents, and they've really spent a lot of time studying each piece that has been on the table. So I've really been excited that the students have taken the time to really look. They've asked quite a few questions.
Well, for one thing, we did one of the most amazing Bibles ever. Our native language is English, so you have to forgive us, I guess, if we have an excessive pride in our English Bible, but it really is an amazing Bible. It has study features in it, borrowed from something called the Bishop's Bible from the 1560s, how to calculate church holidays, what the genealogies of the patriarchs and the prophets are, how to calculate those 14 generations of Jesus that Matthew walks us through. And then it teaches us in the margins, it has references. This is an encyclopedia of religion. It's not just the Bible. And the idea was that it would be the Bible for English Christians. This book is 1611. It's called Calvin's Institutes. It was originally written in 1559 in Latin. In 1560 it was translated into French. And in 1561 translated into English. So this is like a 50th anniversary edition. Calvin's Institutes, the basic, the core theology for Calvinists in the Netherlands, in England, in Scotland, in France, in Switzerland. This is the core non-Lutheran Protestant doctrine.
Something that's very similar in all three of these documents that's relevant to art class is the beautiful inscripted letters. And you see the capital letter A that starts the beginning of the sentence, and you'll see that throughout the text. But look at how unusual that is and how beautiful that's printed on there. In the Middle Ages time, that was a form of alphabet or a form of typography that that brought eloquence to the writing, and it was very specific. A lot of the text back then, this has been printed on a machine, but this handwritten Quran was not printed. It was handwritten. This is from 1611. This is from 1750. And so you're looking at a piece of history that somebody took the time, probably a lifetime, of sitting and copying in Arabic. Never have the opportunity to see again. I want you to look at the writing, and I want you to notice the gold lettering on this page. And I'm wondering if you could figure out what's significant about that gold lettering.
It's probably a dude's name.
Okay. You think it's probably pretty important, huh?
It's probably a dude's name.
It's probably someone's name, or it's maybe a particular
place.
Place.
A holy
It could be a holy place. Could be a commandment of some kind.
A law.
But you know it could be a law. Yep, exactly. So you know it has to be something important because look how it's illuminated.
On this end of the table, what I have are some of my favorite pieces from more modern times. The two in the easels, of course, this one closest to me is a version of the Declaration of Independence. It's from 1777. It's the parchment copy that was sent to the Pennsylvania State Assembly as their record of the Declaration. Each of the states received one of these, as well as the large version, the John Hancock version that the Continental Congress had itself, and that is in the Library of Congress today. On its left is an early printing of the Constitution. That's we call the Connecticut printing of the Constitution because it was sent to the state of Connecticut after the convention, the Constitutional Convention had adjourned. The Constitutional Convention had done its work. Like we have a Constitution, here it is. But now it has to go to the states for their approval. So before there's the schmancy Constitution that we see in Washington again, there are these versions. So this was sent as one of the 5 copies to the state of Connecticut. There were 5 copies sent, in fact, to each of the states by courier, and one set was hand-delivered, and that was to Virginia by the president of the convention, George Washington. So he carried 5 of these himself back to Virginia. Most of them have been lost through history. Each of the states keeps one in its Capitol building somewhere. So those 13 exist. And there are probably about 10 others. And somehow or another, we acquired one in the same way that we acquired one of these early Declarations of Independence. And I don't know how we did it, and it's best really not to ask. I have a copy of the Federalist Papers right next to the Constitution. The Federalist Papers, collection of letters to the editor written by 3 supporters of the Constitution. John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison, great Americans all. They didn't necessarily agree one with another on what they saw as value in the Constitution, but they were allies in the struggle to get it ratified.
What was the whole purpose of the Federalist Papers? What were they trying to get accomplished? They were trying to get the state of New York to ratify the Constitution. Okay. There's a copy, and that was one of the constitutions that they sent out to the states. Okay. Who wrote the Federalist Papers? Who were the three main writers? Hamilton, Jay, and Madison. Okay. Okay. So this actual copy that we have this book was put together in 1788. Okay. 1788 was put together. So let's go to the computer. Let's go to our website, and then I'm going to assign you which one that you're going to do.
All right. My favorite piece here is this very modest-looking little piece. This is the pamphlet from. This is the pamphlet from the next day after the commemoration, after the dedication of Gettysburg. It was a great battle at Gettysburg. 50,000 men killed or wounded on both sides. Tremendous battle. So in 272 words that we call the Gettysburg Address, which many of us memorized as young people, Lincoln completely transforms the meaning of what it means to be American. The 272 words that changed the world, as Gary Wills, biographer of Abraham Lincoln, calls them, and it says, President Lincoln's speech. That's it. That's what I get. It's President Lincoln's speech. And it ends here. Out of 48 pages, I get that. Half a page on the bottom of page 40. Use these documents not only to reveal truths with capital T, but to reveal the world of ideas, to show how ideas that may in fact touch on truths, but how they evolve historically, how we shape them and mold them, and most importantly, how we make choices about what matters to us. At some point, probably in the 1870s or 80s, we began to feel that this speech was truly a eulogy for a nation and not just for soldiers who were being buried on November 19, 1863. It was also an announcement of a rebirth. We were going to be a different country. It took probably 10 or 15 years for that to become clear to people, and it took 100 years or more for it to become absolutely enshrined. And out of that comes some pretty cool stuff. So that's what I like to do with these documents, and I always like it with Lincoln, because I do, because he's my favorite president. So that's what I have for you. I invite questions about the collection. I invite you to come up here also and to continue looking at the documents, because they're the real stars of the show. So I'll just kind of end it there. Thank you.
Well, I suppose that it would be hard for me to real gracefully articulate the way I feel about the Remnant Trust, because the Remnant Trust in public schools in Texas is something completely new and different for me. I've been a school guy, I guess, since I was 6 years old, and I've never seen anything like this, and can only enrich that school for a time. It will enrich our students' lives as well as their education. It'll enrich our school tremendously in terms of the resource we have to carry out our goals and visions and values. If our students can see our teachers as learners and as passionate learners and as excited learners, if our students can watch our teachers' passions come alive about these sacred texts, which happens to all of us, the Gettysburg Address is in here. And, you know, the Declaration of Independence, the Emancipation Proclamation, one of the first 10 printings of the Constitution of the United States, that stirs, you know, emotions in all of us. And to watch teachers who have gotten to hand select these sacred items that they value so much, share those with students, that will show students a perspective of teachers that they may not have seen. This is a magnificent program. It's a progressive program. I've never heard of anything like it. I think it's new, and maybe it'll spark some sort of movement around the country to start taking things out from behind the glass and unwrapping things and letting people walk behind the veil and see the reality of antiquity and history.
Well, before, you know, I mean, I was in awe and it was cool, but it was more because I'd heard about them and stuff, and now I was seeing them for real. But it's kind of sparked an interest in me over the past couple of days about all the documents we have here. You know, I've looked up stuff about them, and I've looked up what they're about and what they say, and, you know, it's caused me to realize how much all of those things have impacted me and have impacted our country and everything. You know, if it hadn't have been for some of those documents in there, you know, nothing would be like it is today. Those things set our customs and our culture, and they really put us in the direction that we're in.